So we'll take k and L to positive integers and then states I1 up to Ik and J1 up to JL such that I1 is not I2 is not I, all the way up to Ik minus 1 is not I, but Ik is I, and then J1 is not I, all the way up to JL minus 1 is not I, but JL is I. We have to show that this joint probability equals the product of these two marginal probabilities. So that's our star. We have just told why this is enough, because in the other case, left hand side and right hand side are both 0. Left hand side and right hand side of star are both 0, and therefore trivially star holds. Okay, so in this case, under this assumption, of about I1 to Ik minus 1 Ik and so on, let's first try to compute the left hand side of star, but left hand side of star is a conditional probability, right? The conditional probability has a numerator and a denominator. We are first going to start with the numerator of the left hand side of star. So namely, this probability along with the condition. So this is where if I put a conditional here, then this will become exactly left hand side of star. The pi hash would be these two conditioned on this. The conditional probability of P A given B is P of A intersection B divided by P of B. So we are just computing first P of A intersection B. Okay. Now note that in this case, if I write like this, these two are actually redundant. Why? Because if psi1 is equal to this, k and l are positive integers. If psi1 is equal to this, that means alpha 1 is automatically k. So alpha 1 is finite. Similarly, alpha 2 is automatically L, and therefore alpha 2 is also finite. Now alpha 1 finite, alpha 2 finite basically just means that the first two return times the finite automatically. So therefore, these two are redundant. I can get rid of it. And then the rest would be the first excursion will go through I1, I2, all the way up to Ik minus 1, then followed by I. And none of them will touch I. So that will make it an excursion, making alpha 1 exactly equal to k. Similarly, this will be J1 up to JL minus 1, then I. And then none of them would be equal to I, which is our assumption anyway. So therefore, this second excursion length automatically will become L. Okay? In fact, as I would say, these two are also redundant, because if this happens and under our assumptions that these are not equal to I, if this happens, this means that the first return time is exactly k, and the second return time is k plus L. So therefore, alpha 1 is k and alpha 2 equal to L. Okay, that's automatic. So therefore, that also can be got rid of. And moreover, alpha 1 equal to k and alpha 2 equal to L would imply that instead of tau, wherever I see tau I1, I'll put k. Wherever I see tau I2, I'll put k plus L. Okay, so this is just putting the values. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Now, as I said earlier already, that alpha 1 equal to k and alpha 2 equal to L are redundant, because this automatically implies that first excursion length is k, and the second excursion length is L. So therefore, I could have actually written like this. Forget about alpha 1, alpha 2. Because this is happening because of our assumption. Okay? Because our assumption, if this happens, then obviously if this event happens, up to this happens, say, it automatically means alpha 1 is equal to k. Okay? Because this means that x1 has not returned to I, x2 has not returned to I, all the way up to xk minus 1 has not returned to I. Okay? It's not equal to I. And then finally, xk is I. So therefore, first time it's returning to I is k. Similarly, this part would tell you that the second excursion length has to be L. After the first excursion, the first L minus 1 steps, you don't reach I, and then finally you reach I. So therefore, this is automatic. So I can get rid of those two as well. So these are redundant. Okay. Now, once you see this, This is where we'll use the, you'll write it as a product of the, so this is a joint probability. We will write it as the probability of this times probability of the second part conditioned on the first part. So probability of this and this is equal to probability of this times probability of the second one given the first one. Okay. Now, of course, now we can use the Markov properties. That's what we are going to use now. So we have been able to show that for such states, this probability is actually equal. This is the numerator of the left-hand side of star. This is equal to this probability times this probability. This unconditional probability times this conditional probability. Now it's time to use the Markov property. Remember, this is the future. This is the present and past, right? So this is the present and the rest is past. Now all that would matter is the present. So all of this can go away. And then also by time homogeneity, you can completely forget about what happened earlier also. And then you can also make it free of k. You can make k equal to 0. So by Markov property, which also includes time homogeneity, the first one is going to remain the same. The second conditional probability would just become the unconditional probability. We can, first of all, you can forget about x1 to xk minus 1 here. And then we can put k equal to 0. If you put k equal to 0, we are essentially conditioning on x naught equal to I. But x naught is anyway equal to I. That's how we are starting the Markov chain. And then that's why we are denoting by pi. That's fine. So there is no condition at all. Okay. And then we are putting k equal to 0. So this would become x1. This would become the next one will become x2 and so on. This will become xl minus 1. And this is xl. So all I'm saying is because of Markov property and time homogeneity, or because of time homogeneous Markov property, this conditional probability would be equal to this unconditional probability. Okay, so this is, I would say, the crucial step of the proof, the use of Markov property and time homogeneity at the same time. Okay, so once more, this is the future, this is the present, and these are the past things. So first thing, because of Markov property, you can forget about the past. This would just become condition on this. I could have just kept this condition here, xk equal to I. Now, because of time homogeneity, I can put k equal to 0 everywhere. So then, therefore, this would become x1 equal to j1, all the way up to xl minus 1 equal to jl minus 1, and xl equal to I, condition on x naught equal to I. Now, condition on x not equal to I would become pi, and that we are starting from x not equal to I anyway, so that probability is 1, so that conditioning doesn't make any difference. So therefore, this is just unconditional probability of x1 equal to j1, all the way up to xl minus 1 equal to jl minus 1, and xl equal to I. Okay, so this is the Markov property that we are using here. Now, of course, because of our choice of the states, I can forcefully add an alpha 1 equal to k, and here again alpha 1 equal to L. So this is again both of them. Note that both statements are now all about starting from x1 to xk, and here it's x1 to xl. So the first statement would imply, the first one, this event automatically implies, because of the choice of the states, I1 to ik minus 1 not being equal to I, this automatically says that the first return time starting from I, first return time to I is actually equal to k. So therefore I can just put it in. It's automatic, so I can put it in. So alpha 1, which is tau y1, is equal to k. Similarly, in the second one, the first return time would be equal to L, because up to L minus 1, it doesn't reach I, and then at Lth time, it hits I. So therefore, the first return time is L. So I can forcefully add that also. So again, as I said, the last step follows because of the choice of the states. Okay, I1 to ik minus 1 are all not equal to I, and j1 to jl minus 1 are all not equal to I. Because of that, I can do this. So what we have done is we have shown, this is just to summarize what we have shown. So note that here, because of these two are redundant, I've told you already. Right? So we have shown that this is equal to this, but then these two are redundant, so I can get rid of them. So what we have shown is that the joint probability of under PI, joint probability of psi1 and psi2 taking these two values, okay, is equal to this product of these two probabilities. And this is true for all states I1 to Ik minus 1 and J1 to JL minus 1. All of them are in S, but none of them should be equal to I. Okay? This is what we have shown. This is just a summary of what we have shown. Now, take sum over all such values of I1 up to Ik minus 1 and J1 up to JL minus 1. Okay? In S. Sum over all such values. So basically you are summing over all states in S except I here. Okay. If you do that, then the first quantity here, you will just get, and you are going to sum over all these values and all these values. So you'll get the marginal of alpha 1 and alpha 2. So essentially, you're going to look at the joint probability of alpha 1 equal to k and alpha 2 equal to n. So if you do that, this left-hand side here will give you the first quantity here. If you sum over all those values, you're going to get alpha 1 equal to k and alpha 2 equal to n, the probability of that under pi. On the other hand, if you do that to the right-hand side here, the second quantity, the first one will give you the marginal of alpha 1 equal to k under pi. Similarly, the second one will give you the marginal of alpha 1 equal to L under pi. So what we have shown is this is equal to this times this for all KL in N. Okay? And of course, we know that if such thing happens, then we can always, instead of alpha 1 here, we could have as well put alpha 2. Okay? So summing over all possible, and this is true for all positive integer KL, now sum over all possible values of K and L. Okay? That will give you that the joint probability of alpha 1 finite and alpha 2 finite is nothing but the square of the probability of alpha 1 finite. Okay? So here we have both alpha 1, because both are starting, here we have alpha 1 and we have alpha 1 here. So both are alpha 1. Now, if you sum over all possible values of K and L, both of K and L both being positive integers, left-hand side here is going to give you the joint probability of alpha 1 being finite and alpha 2 being finite, under Pi, of course. On right-hand side, your sum, your double sum will split into two sums. You will have sum over K of this thing and then sum over L of this thing. Both of them would give you the same quantity. Will give you Pi of alpha 1 finite. And then therefore you'll have product of two such, so therefore you'll get a square. So that gives you that this is equal to this. And also, alpha 1 finite and alpha 2 finite is same as saying the first return time is finite and second return time is finite. So these two probabilities are equal. So what we have shown is that this joint probability is equal to square of this probability. So this is where we'll stop today. Of course, the proof is very long, so I had to break it up into various parts, and we have only shown up to this. Next class, we'll finish this proof.